I'm making an apple pie crumble no-bake cheesecake that is perfect for fall. You guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Rebekah with Learning Together by Grace. Let's go. So these are the ingredients we are using today. I have a graham cracker crumb crust. I have apples, salt, cinnamon, sugar, butter, cream cheese, heavy whipping cream, as well as powdered sugar. And we can't forget the flour, you guys. I am starting off by making my crumble. I'm going to have this recipe on my blog, and I'm going to put the link to it in the description below. The recipe that I created, it is for 2 of these apple pie crumble no-bake cheesecake. So I am putting in 1/4 cup of flour, 1/8 cup of sugar. So that was just half of a 1/4 cup. I'm doing 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, as well as a dash of salt, or you could say 1/8 of a teaspoon or 1/4 of a teaspoon, however a dash looks for you. So now I'm just going to go in and mix all of that together just to make sure that I get my flour and cinnamon and salt mixed in, as well as sugar mixed in well. So I'm going in with my butter, and this is actually room temperature butter. You can do straight from the refrigerator. It really just depends on what you are wanting. So I started off with 2 tablespoons of butter, and later you're going to see that I added another tablespoon. I was actually creating this recipe on the fly. I was in my car a few days prior to this, just thinking about fall and thinking about the flavors of fall, and apple cinnamon crumble, but yet cheesecake came to mind. And so I'm creating this recipe as I go, but I just covered the butter with my flour, and I am mixing it with my fork. And so here is where I go in and add that extra tablespoon of butter. So a total of 3 tablespoons. So I'm just doing the same thing and just covering that butter with some flour, and then taking my fork, smashing it in, and I'm just mixing as well as I can with my fork. So now you're going to see that I'm switching over to my hands. Honestly, I enjoy cooking with my hands because a lot of times I feel like I get more accuracy whenever I am using my hands when I cook. So I'm just using my hands to mix that together even more. And I'm taking a big chunk of it and just kind of squeezing it in between my fingers just to make sure that it does form a ball. But then when I release it and crumble it up, it's more so like sand. So now I'm just making sure it's evenly layered on the bottom of this pan, and I'm placing this in the oven at 350 degrees for 15 minutes. Now it's time to peel those apples, and I'm going to core and dice them as well. For this recipe, for this particular day, I just used these 3 apples, and I do like to bake with gala apples. I'm not sure if that is the right apple to bake with or not, but I honestly will bake with whatever apples I have on hand. I was actually reading a fall recipe book that gave some suggestions for apples that you can just eat raw, ones that taste better baked, or what have you. But a lot of times I just use whatever I have in my pantry. So I'm just peeling that here, and then I'm going to take my apple slicer and slice all of that up. And then I'm going to remove the core, and I'm going to begin dicing those up. So I just want to make mention here, something that you're going to see is that I do not like to waste any parts of my fruit. And so either it can be used for compost, like the cores and the peels can be used for composting if you have a garden, in which we do have a garden. Although I have to say I have not been composting here lately, but I do want to get back into composting. Or either you can save those peels for something else. In the past, I have made apple cider vinegar, and it's actually very easy to make your own apple cider vinegar. So I'm going to save all of those cores as well as the peel, and I will either create some apple cider vinegar, or I might even decide to create some kind of jam or jelly with those apple peels. The other day I was trying to recreate Starbucks apple crumble coffee iced latte with some of those peels, and it kind of tasted like it a little bit, but it definitely was not it. But anyway, I'm just dicing these evenly into small pieces, and there goes my daughter, always taking a little bite. And so here's my freezer bag where I have been collecting these peels, and I just put them all in there. I'll seal it up, and then I will put it right back into my freezer for later. You guys, let me know some things that you like to use your apple peels and cores for. I did see somewhere, and I can't remember if it was a video or not, where somebody would puree them and add them to cakes. So now I am adding those chopped up apples to my saucepan, and I'm going to turn it on to just a medium low heat. And I'm adding in, I added almost a quarter of a cup of sugar. Of course, you can add the entire thing, but I kind of wanted to take away some of the sweetness there. And then I'm going in with some cinnamon. I believe this was 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Like I said, I'll have the recipe linked down below so that you can go to my blog and see how much I used. I also added in about a quarter of a teaspoon of salt and 1 tablespoon of butter. So now I'm just going in and just stirring all of that together. I'm going to add the lid and allow it to simmer for a while. Now I'm just going to come back and just stir it intermittently. I just checked on it occasionally to stir it and make sure that everything was looking good and that nothing was burning at the bottom. So I covered it back up. And then now here I am pretty much done with cooking it. As you can see, the apples kind of wilted a little bit, and they have that nice caramelly color to them, as well as there is a caramel at the bottom. You guys, this is good stuff. This is what you're wanting to look for when you're making that apple pie filling, or you can call it a compote. Now I'm just going to place it to the side because I do want it to cool for about an hour before I add it to my no-bake cheesecake portion. Now we're going into our no-bake cheesecake filling. I am doing 1 ounce of cream cheese. I'm using my stand mixer for this. I'm adding my whisk attachment because I do want to cream this up nicely, and I want it to be nice and airy. So I'm just kind of starting on a lower setting, and then I will just increase the speed as I go because I don't want it flying everywhere. And I am just going in and scraping down those sides just to make sure that everything is getting mixed well. And so you'll see here that I am actually going to increase the speed just a little bit. And I do this because I wanted to get a little bit more whipped than what it was. Now I'm going to add in my powdered sugar. So for this particular recipe, I'm doing 1 cup of powdered sugar, because I do want it to have a nice sweetness to it. This is a part of the reason why I didn't add as much sugar to those apples as what I called for in my recipe. Adjust it as you like, because I know some people like really sweet things and some people like moderately sweet things. So, you know, just use the sugar to your liking. And even with the cream cheese filling, you can use whatever amount of sugar that you want. But I do find that the cup of sugar makes this a little more fluffy. So now that I'm done creaming that sugar with the cream cheese for a little bit, I'm adding in 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, as well as 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going in and scraping down the sides. You have to keep doing this as you're adding in the different ingredients. just to make sure that you get everything nice and incorporated. All right, so now we're going to start this back up again, and I'm just going to whip it a little bit longer. And I have this probably on a speed of 4. So now we are going to get started with our heavy whipping cream. I am using an entire carton of heavy whipping cream, but I'm doing it in parts. So I used half of the heavy whipping cream, and I'm just going to start whisking that very slow. I just want to make sure that that heavy whipping cream doesn't start flying all over the place. Trust me, it happens. It happens a lot. So we're just going to slowly raise the speed as it begins to thicken up. And then now that it's a little more thick, I'm going to add in the remaining of that heavy whipping cream. And then again, we're going to start on a low speed. So this is my stir speed. If you have a KitchenAid, you know that there's the stir speed. And then you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It goes on up. And so I am just slowly adjusting the speed as I go. And as you can see, it's starting to get creamier. You guys, you want to make sure again to scrape down the sides of your bowls, because we want to get all of that goodness incorporated. All right, now that I am done with scraping the sides of my bowls, I am going to get this going again. And so we are going to speed this up a little bit because we want to make sure that this gets nice and creamy for our filling. So now I'm going to adjust the speed. I put it all the way to 8 at this point, and I'm going to allow it to whip for about 15 to 20 seconds at 8. And then I'm going to amp it up to its highest speed at the very end, because I want to make sure that it gets fully whipped. Of course, do not forget to scrape the sides of your bowls as much as you need to, again, to make sure everything is nice and incorporated. So now that we are done with that, we are going to remove this from the base, and I'm going to make sure that I shake out my whisk so that I can get that extra filling into my bowl. We don't want to lose that. All right, so here's our pre-made pie crust. Now, in the recipe that I'm posting down below, that's on my blog, it does have a recipe for 2 graham cracker crusts. You can always halven the recipe to make 1. That way you are in control of how many pies you want to make. So I'm starting off by layering the bottom of this graham cracker crust with my apple pie filling, and I'm just going to smooth it out. So again, I did just enough apples just to make 1 pie. I only wanted to make 1 for today. And so next up, I am going in with that crumble. You guys, this crumble was so good. It reminded me of like a nice crispy butter cookie when I tasted it. So I'm just going to sprinkle the crumbles on top of the apple pie filling. And there's no rhyme or reason on how I'm doing it. I'm just trying to cover as much of those apples as I can possibly cover. I do hold back some of the crumble, and then we use it later on. So now it is time for the no-bake cheesecake cream filling. You guys, this was so divine. This would be like a perfect dip for some cookies or some fruit. Oh, it would be so divine. But I only use half of the cream cheese filling because the cream cheese filling does make 2 pies. So keep that in mind. If you want to just only use half of the ingredients that I used, you can do that. But you guys, we're going to freeze it for later. So I'm going to be able to use this later on. But now that I have that no-bake cream cheese filling inside of my pie crust, I'm just going to fill in any gaps and smooth it out just a little bit more. And then once that is done, I am going to cover it up, and I will be adding this to my refrigerator for 4 hours up to overnight. The longer the better. And I actually like to add mine to my freezer a lot of times because I like for it to get nice and firm. So here I am filling out a freezer bag so that I can store that extra no-bake cheesecake cream in there. And it will freeze up to 3 months nicely, you guys. So here is my cheesecake, and I think I took it right out of the freezer if I'm not mistaken. This was a little bit ago when I recorded this, and I'm just going to check to make sure that it's set up. And you guys, it did. It was so nice. So now I am going in with some of that leftover crumble, and I'm just using it to decorate my no-bake cheesecake. Of course, you guys can choose to not even have that. You can eat it just as is. But I always like to go the extra mile and do some pretty decorations. I also ended up making some more of that apple pie filling and added it to the top. And then I am adding some more of those crumbles around the apple pie filling. And lastly, I took some of that apple caramel sauce that was at the bottom of my pan after doing the apple pie filling. And I'm just using that to sprinkle it all over my apple pie crumble no-bake cheesecake. You guys, this dessert was so divine. We literally ate it all that night. So here is a picture presentation for you guys to enjoy. I hope you guys will try this out. Leave me a comment below letting me know if you will. And you guys, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share so people know what we're doing over here. Hit that notification bell so that you know when I post again. You guys, thank you for always coming back, and God bless you. Bye.